everyone, and welcome back to Destiny Designers University with another episode of Speaking Legally with attorneys Royce Russell Esquire and Ed Pichardo Esquire. We're talking about the continued legal issues that we're seeing happening during COVID-19, what you need to know, how you can arm and prepare yourself properly with the correct information, and then just using some plain old common sense and wisdom as we're navigating this new normal. So I'll turn it over to our two hosts of the show. I'll start with Mr. Ed Pichardo so he can greet you all.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ed Pichardo. Thank you for allowing me to address you and to offer my advice. Hello.
And over to Royce Russell Esquire.
Welcome back, everybody, to another segment of Speaking Legally, where we combine legal issues with cultural issues and try to keep our community informed. And today we're going to start off with where we left off last week. And I want to again say thank you for all the first-time listeners. Hopefully you become long-time listeners to our show. And we're going to try to maintain, and let me just give you a little something so you can look at and sustain this conversation for a long time. Now, sustain is a legal term, but it's also something that we need to do during the time of COVID. We need to sustain our mental stability. We need to sustain our emotional outbursts. We need to sustain our credibility. And when I say credibility, I'm just going to lead right into one of our callers that responded by way of Facebook. When Ed, I think I called you on this. I told you about a brother that sent me a message and said, quite frankly, Royce, do the police have probable cause if you're not wearing a mask? And I told him, yes, they do. There's an executive order that's out that say you need to wear a mask. And if you're not wearing a mask, then the police have a right to stop you. They have a right to question you. They have a right to ask you why you don't have a mask on. And we know how that escalates into something else. So let's don't be boo-boo the fools out here. You know what I mean? Let's step up and let's step right. And let's wear the mask. No more standing on 125th Street or standing on Walton Avenue acting like COVID is not out here. And then when we get stopped by the police, have a complaint. Or better yet, give me a call and say you want to sue, because I'm laughing all the way from the bank back because it just doesn't make sense. All right, so we have to protect ourselves and we have to sustain our emotional, mental wherewithal to know that if we're going to walk around without a mask, we're just asking to be stopped. And Ed, I know you read what I read about the couple of parties that were happening underground. I'll let you speak a little bit to that, and then I'm gonna get to the nitty gritty, because here go another scenario where who's crying wolf and for what?
Okay, cops bust massive non-socially distant party in Canarsie barber shop. From what I understand, 2 people were arrested during that incident, and about 60 summonses were handed out after police officers found what they report dozens of people partying at a Canarsie barbershop.
And let me stop you there. Like, you know, when we read these things, you know, I'm going to keep it 100. You know, I'm a lawyer from day sun up to sundown. But I'm also an African-American male. I live in the community. And when I read reports, I have to like do my critical reading, my critical deciphering. So when they say it was reported that a party was going on, in this scenario, we don't need to even play like Fugazi on it, right? The party was going down. It's in the barbershop, bro. It is what it is, right? You can't tell me that this is some conspiracy or something that's happened that didn't happen. It went down exactly the way it's reading here. Cops bust massive non-social distant party in Canarsie barbershop. They were jamming in the basement and they got caught out there. Not only did they get caught out there, who was the smart guy to have a gun on him? And who was the sidekick that had the weed on him? Talk to me, brother. Talk to me.
Well, listen, you know, this is a situation as I mentioned the last program, we're talking about reckless behavior. We're talking about people endangering each other and endangering others, you know, violating the law. You know, New York City is very strict about liquor licenses and the serving of alcohol and drinks for profit. You know, and people are trying to, of course, exploit the situation and figure out ways of making a quick buck. And unfortunately, you know, in the process of trying to make that quick buck, now these people are facing criminal charges and or fines, summonses, and you know, the impact of the legal system. You know, with respect to the Canarsie issue, you know, as we talked maybe a little earlier, you know, the NYPD Detectives Association is now looking to sue anyone who puts their members at risk of catching coronavirus for violating social distancing rules. So
now let's bounce that for us for a second, right?
Okay.
So before we head back, you know, you segue. Now you're the one that made the U-turn in the street now. So since you made the U-turn, I'm gonna have to talk to the situation, right? You know, I thought you was driving down a one-way street, but you decided to make a U-turn. So let's make the U-turn. Here's the pot calling the kettle black, as they used to say, or the black man calling the African man black, or whatever you want to put it out here, right? You know, however you want to phrase it, right? Funny, very funny. So we got the police who are talking about, at least the Detective Association, talking about suing citizens, right? They have to come out of their pocket. Let's just say this fictitious legal thing were to happen. Let's just say, right? So they sue me. I got to come out of my pocket. That's their theory, right? They with my behind, I sue them, it comes out of the city's pocket. Think about that for a minute. Think about that for a minute. They sue me. If this were to happen, which I'm gonna tell you it's never gonna happen, but if it were to happen, they sue me, I have to pay personally. I have to pay personally. I sue them, they don't have to pay personally. It comes out of the taxpayers' money. You have to pay, I have to pay, somebody else gotta pay. Just on the theory alone, what do you think? You think we can't read? I went to every single class. I did not skip. I made every single grade. They wanted to skip me. I said, no, hold me back. I want to see what third grade is about, because I knew in third grade, they were going to bring up something like this and I was going to miss it. So bring me back. And now that I look at this picture right here, and this is the social commentary and the cultural commentary, all these brothers and sisters got masks on. So they at the party all together and they all standing there with masks. They all jamming with masks on their face. The brother right here who got the handcuffs, you see his mask. You see the brother down here with the red hoodie, he got his mask. And I'm not going to tell you, because I told you I'm not going to tell you. I received 2 phone calls from somebody that was at that party. And what you got to do, you got to walk away. You got to take a time out. And nobody likes when they're in a timeout, and they damn sure don't like me when I'm telling them that I got to put them in a timeout and that this is going nowhere. But this is going nowhere. And this is ridiculous. And no one should be able to help. No one should even volunteer to help you, really. No one should volunteer, because as we discussed before, and I'll let you chime in, as we discussed before, we talked about getting the summons. We talked about then having a warrant. We talked about if you're at this place and you have a warrant and you're given the summons, or you fail to appear because you threw the summons away, now you have a situation. And is this a violation, or this might bump up to a misdemeanor if something happens here? What are they thinking? Help me out.
Yeah, because God forbid, if you already have a warrant and you hanging out amongst this crowd and you catch that summons and they run your name, you know, this is a bad time to be in the criminal justice system and in custody. You know, I mean, you know, in terms of the lawsuit and the Detectives Association, you know, we could get into a whole conversation about standing, whether it's the union that's going to be suing the citizen as an individual or the officer suing. So, you know, we could maybe talk about that, you know, somewhere down the line, if I was the attorney who had to defend this citizen against this this lawsuit. So, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, the article seems to indicate certainly that, you know, they're exploring these avenues of legal action. You know, I like you, am dubious about how far they're going to get on this theory.
Now, but you said something, you used the word standing, and I don't want that to go past anyone that is listening, right? And so can you just explain, what do you mean by standing? What is that? I mean, because that's a legal term that we use, right? And so you use it in reference to the Detective Association. What does it mean? So I think we got a little pause. You were saying in order for what, Ed?
you know, in order for you to file a lawsuit, you have to be, in order for someone to file a lawsuit, they have to be able to prove that there has been an injury, okay? That there has been an injury, you know, that you've suffered some sort of injury or deprivation or some sort of harm that, you know, supports the filing of the lawsuit. And you always get into tricky waters when it's a organization trying to sue on behalf of individuals. And this is outside of you, say, trying to file a lawsuit that has to do with a declaratory judgment, but that's a whole nother issue. But in terms of standing, in order for you to have standing, you have to be able to show some sort of injury. And in many cases, if it's, say, where the Detectives Association filing this lawsuit, you immediately ask, well, is it the association who's suffering the injury or the particular officer? And what exactly is the injury? Do you have COVID? Are you trying to say that it emanated from this incident and from this particular individual? You know, what are you saying? You know, is your argument speculative or is it an actual injury? So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about standing.
And so to add on to that and just give another analogy, we'll take that and we use another analogy. You're at a friend's house, the police come in, they search the house illegally. You're there visiting. You want to sue because they searched the house illegally. You don't have standing because you're just a visitor. The owner of the apartment, the owner of the house has standing because it is his or her home. So that's what we mean by standing. And if we want to talk about what you talked about, causation, is that the police are going to have a hard time, whoever brings this lawsuit, to show that I stopped you at a party and that caused me to get COVID-19, right? Who's to say that I didn't already have the symptoms? Who's to say that I didn't get it 2 hours or 2 minutes or 3 seconds before we stopped the party? So, I mean, legally, we see it falling apart, but culturally, what are we doing? Because I don't see no white folks there partying right now.
So let's pause because we're going to move from one part of Brooklyn to the next. So let's go to another incident that happened so you can continue the commentary that's a little couple of miles away from what we just saw in that part of town.
Now, in that part of town, you can see that the picture is quite different, right? So now they had the bottle club, right? And they don't talk about any real, well, look, it looks quite friendly. The depiction is totally different than the depiction that we saw before, but
well, I got a feeling that that was a general photo that they picked out from, what is it, Shutterstock? So, you know.
Well, kudos to them. I just want to know who was involved in it. And clearly, there's a whole bunch of fines that could be levied from that because now you're selling alcohol illegally. And we got the ABC laws, right? So were they selling alcohol? Were they giving alcohol away? So there's a bunch of things that were going on there. And once again, in that scenario, I think someone was also found with illegal contraband, if not a gun, definitely drugs. And I have to say, without putting a color to the face or a name to the person, what are you thinking about, bro? What are you thinking about, sis? As my daughter say, come on, bruh. Come on, bruh. What you thinking about? And I don't get it. I don't get it. Right. And so in this scenario right here, you know that 9 times out of 10, with all the criminal justice reform that we have, that this person is probably going to have bail set on them and probably is going to have to stay in. And we could talk about what that life looked like, because that life is totally different. You're not
What's
having
that life like, Royce?
Well, that life is it takes one to know one, right? So having had to go to the Bronx and represent someone in the era of the COVID, you're not getting a chance to see your client. There's no face-to-face. There's no looking into the attorney's eyes to have a feeling that he's going to fight for you. You seeing that client, and that client is seeing you through video. So once again, I'll circle back to what we discussed on the last episode. If you do not have an attorney that's retained, and once again, I'm not talking about putting money down. I mean having a relationship with an attorney that you can call upon when something like this happens. And let's just say you at the bottle club, wrongfully at the bottle club, or you at the barbershop, wrongfully. Now you scrambling. Now you're scrambling to get a name and a number, and you can't even touch that person or feel that person. Because when that person walks in the courtroom, you on the video somewhere, you don't really have privacy. There's really an interview process that goes on, but I don't trust the interview process because I don't know who's listening. So you can't discuss any of the facts, right? And so now you're making a presentation for bail with someone that I'm not going to say you have to know him like your third cousin, but you got to know him a little bit, a little something. You got to be able to look in the eyes and know a little something.
And you and I both know that what happens is, and you and I both know that what happens when you're privately retained, you'll have a conversation with the family and kind of get a little background, certain facts that will help you in the making of that argument for release. That under that setting, if you don't have that relationship, you may not be able or be privy to those facts that would really aid an individual in their representation, not to mention the privacy issues. So, you're absolutely right, Royce. I agree 100%.
And I think it sets the groundwork for what I call an attorney-client relationship, that trust effect. Now, we're going to have to look at trust in different ways nowadays, because now you can notarize a document by way of Zoom. And now you're interviewing clients by way of Zoom. If I get ready to loan somebody some money, I want to see them. I don't want to Zoom them. You get my $5, I want to see you in the face. I want to be able to say next week, I want my $5. I don't want this to be a Zoom conversation. But, when we're in an era where we were talking about criminal justice reform and keeping the family unit together, when you have a pandemic like this and you have the obstacles, although well needed and well intended obstacles, such as video and Zoom, what you're experiencing now is a separation. And a separation from attorney to client can most likely lead to a poor defense and a poor presentation and a misunderstanding. And we don't want those things. We want the true blue, touch you, feel you, smell you type of situation. And getting caught in this cold, this is what can happen.
So let's, time is going. I'm going to let you make your point, Ed, but I also want to make sure we drill down today, because the next episode we can go a little bit further, but you're talking about something totally different that I don't want people to kind of skip by. You're meeting with clients via video. Like, what happens when you get arrested? What are the steps? Why Royce just mentioned you should have an attorney that you retain so you know what to do. I think we need to just give 3 quick tips on what next steps. First, have someone to call. You have Royce Russell Esquire and Pichardo Esquire right here as 2 people that you can use as resources. But after you make that call, what else should you be aware of? What's going to happen differently if your loved one is arrested? You don't know where to go, what precinct, like what do people do in this time?
Well, I can tell you right now, if you thought precincts were not user-friendly before, they're definitely not user-friendly now. So you rushing down to the precinct in force will only be met with some type of resistance, all right? And you rushing down there with force, being emotional, will definitely be met with a whole lot of resistance. So what you have to do, you have to make the call. You have to let someone else advocate for you. And quite honestly, and it's so unfortunate, you're just gonna have to be patient, because anything that the police officers say as to why the paperwork is being slowed up, what is happening to prevent the transportation of your loved one down to court, is going to be, it can't be proven, and it's going to be deemed valid because we're in the stage of what we are. So 1, do not rush down to the precinct. Maybe one person go down to the precinct to try to get some understanding while the other person is making the phone call. That's 1 tip.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Ed? What's 1 tip for you? That's good information, because things are happening in real time and so much is moving so quickly that we need to be aware of what to do next.
Well, I mean, certainly as a follow-up, even knowing what precinct your loved one is going to be transported to, names of officers, the particular time of the incident, that's all helpful and is in my client and what's going to happen next. So certainly the gathering of facts is extremely important. As we discussed, the idea of you being able to just go down there and see your client or making certain inquiries, maybe this current state of, COVID-19, not to mention once if the person then gets transported down to booking and then you're trying to get to the arraignment and trying to find out what time they're going to be arraigned. And that's a process in of itself in terms of trying to get your documentation that you're going to be representing this person and then finding out the particular time that they're going to appear in front of a judge. And then, of course, you're going to have this distancing in terms of talking to your client by way of video and the arraignment taking place that way. So, my simple advice is, just once you make the call to the attorney with the idea of having someone that you can call upon, making sure that you have your ducks in a row in terms of the gathering of the facts so that, your advocate that you're hiring has the ability to do their job in the best way possible.
Stacey, let me just add one more tip. And it is, I don't know if it's more of a tip, word of advice, word of caution, or help you self-manage and self-regulate regulate the situation. You have to understand, depending upon the crime and given the era we're in, if you thought judges were biased based upon social or cultural or racial tint, it does not serve you well to be one of the party goers with the gun or the drugs and be in front of a judge who is saying to themselves, and Ed, we said we were going to talk about this and we may not be able to get to it today, but we could get to it as we move on. A judge, like lawyers, are first responders. Whether you believe it or not, we are first responders. We are people that are on the scene when it goes bad. We are the people that are on the scene that have to regulate what's going on in society. So that first responder judge and that first responder prosecutor is not really looking too kindly on your situation because they just want to do their time, their 8 hours, 12 hours, and go home with as little contact as possible. Now, the attorney retained, they don't have a problem with it because they're going to do their job and they're getting paid for it. An attorney that might be there from legal aid or public defenders, because they are there already, they may not be up in arms, but you better believe that the judge has a spin on what's going on and what's happening, which means that there may not be enough money that you have in your pocket to have the person released. And we need to understand that.
And I think the point here is that right now within this climate, those attorneys that have to show up in these areas, in these courthouses or whatever, even if you're in the building by way of video, those are frontline workers. They're having to leave their home to perform their job within the midst of all of this. And I just want to mention this briefly. Judge Johnny Lee Baines died at 64 years old on March 26th. He was a Kings County Supreme Court judge.
Wow.
Who was, according to his duties and orders, he was continuing to preside over a calendar up until the point when the court system was shut down. This was an African American gentleman, from our community who was serving and died in the line of duty. And let's not talk about all of the lawyers that were in his courtroom during this time before the real social distancing was implemented, being exposed to clients, being exposed to other lawyers. Let's talk about Frontline. They mentioned in an article about him and, him having court, I believe, on March 12th while all this was going on. I was in Brooklyn criminal court on March 11th, and Royce, I'm sure, we were kind of going to court during that second week of March when this stuff was really hitting the fan. And, and even after, you got lawyers kind of show up in places and you just touching something could possibly cause you to get this terrible, a virus. So, I just want to, put that out there. Sometimes people look at the lawyers and say, oh, you're the big, high and mighty and, sophisticated lawyers. But, we put our lives on the line for our clients in many cases, So.
Well, I can tell you, we're not going to receive any sympathy pay. We're not going to receive any hazardous pay. We got to do what we got to do, and I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting that you are suggesting anything other. No. But we see the picture. We see it. We know it's painted very clearly, and we're going to jump through the fires to do whatever we can do. I do want to. You mentioned someone that did pass away, and I do want to mention a former client of mine. I'll just say his name is Brother Mitchell. Who was, we met through unfortunate circumstance. He's driving his car, tinted windows, police pulled him over. He had North Carolina plates. He was in Harlem. All the stereotypes, all the profiling, everything that you can mention, all came down on him at once. But he was calm. He stayed composed. He was aware. He listened, and he made a call while his son was sitting right next to him. Got everything on video. He was vindicated. He received an award. He walked out of my office, just thanking me and referred me to many, many, many people, went and opened up a juice shop and a barber shop in Harlem, used his money in the right way, or at least in a productive way. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, God bless him and his family. Hopefully I've been helpful to them in reference to understanding what they have to do as far as the funeral home is concerned, or, as far as the burial, and whether that can take place by Zoom, what the morgue is doing, how you kind of go around that. And, that's another episode for another time, but, we have to be careful out here. We definitely
Absolutely. Do. I mean, there's so much to talk about, and that's why Speaking Legally will continue to be back weekly with updates in real time as this happens. This is unprecedented. There's so many layers to every situation that we're dealing with, from looking at lawyers and judges and court officers as frontline and first line responders to what to happen or what to do with mortgages when someone passes away. They didn't have will, estates, and trusts. So it's a lot that we'll be going through, and we're going to go through it together. We're going to keep bringing you information from the legal perspective and cultural perspective, but particularly the legal perspective that can help you make good choices and good decisions in a very tense time. And that the information that we share, I hope you can just share it with somebody who might be off their rocker to be at a party in the midst of this and unnecessarily put themselves in harm's way to be arrested. I mean, let's use some common sense. Let's not have to call the attorney, but if we do have to call an attorney, I want both of you to share your information as we close out. How can people contact you, even if they want to follow up on something that was shared in today's show? So we'll start with you, Royce.
Yes, I can be contacted at 718-785-8890. That's 718-785-8890. You can follow me on Facebook. You can comment on Facebook. All you got to do is, look, I got so many handles. I don't even know which bike to ride. Just type in Royce Russell, ESQ, and go from there. It's always a mystery to me when my 14th cousin said, I've been trying to reach you. I'm like, boy, I know you got a computer. You know what I'm saying? I know you know how to spell my first name. It's R-O-Y-C-E, not R-O-Y and then C-E-E. It ain't Royce C, it's Royce. So I know you can get it together, and I know our listeners can get it together to find me if they need me. But once again, they can reach me at 718-785-8890. And I look forward to educating and bringing our culture to the forefront of what we do next week.
Thank you, Royce. And Ed, over to you.
And just real quick, I want to mention next week I'll talk a little bit about the workers' comp inquiries that I got in the state of that during COVID-19. But 514-9099, that's 718-514-9099, or at EDP at law office of Edward Pichardo.com.
Absolutely. And if you want to pick up some reading while you're moving about, you can also go to cardiacarrestbook.net, how to handle unlawful police stops. That's something to keep on your person in this time if you are moving about, even though we're sheltered in. So make sure you get a copy or give a copy, because now more than ever, we really need to know our rights and be able to protect ourselves. So our love, prayers, and condolences go out to everyone who has lost loved ones, particularly to the family of the judge that you mentioned, your client, Royce, and those who are fighting through recovery of COVID-19. We will be lifting you all up in prayer. All of us have been affected with family members, and we're praying that we all get through this. We don't know when it will end, but we know it will be an end point, and we want to come out of this better than what we're dealing with and more knowledgeable about how we move forward in the future. So thanks for tuning in. This is Dr. Stacy signing off from Destiny Designers. We'll see you next week.
All right, take care now.